work with a younger engineer on some high-profile project because you think he's got the goods and you want to kind of bring him along?
You have to. When you give back to something, I mean, we all teach classes or do groups, but I do the same thing as getting some young guys to work with. If it's a Frank Filippetti in New York or Elliot Shiner, we always have a person learning next to the Pro Tools, because I just did a thing this week and I said to the Pro Tools operator, she was very good, and I said, go to bar 32. And she said, what's 32? And I said, you should know, not because you're looking at a graph, where the verse is and where we're going to punch in. And so I learned to teach that point of view, that you listen like we used to, rolling tape back at double, triple speed, where we think the verse or the chord. I mean, so you're part of that direction. Well, a lot of the teaching is not happening. So the only way to really teach that is to come in, make some mistakes. It's not that hurtful, because if Randy's doing a solo, and I say, okay, let me copy it. Hello, copy. Make the punch in, and the punch ins right now, I know that may not mean a lot to you, but you couldn't be inaccurate before. It wasn't allowed. You would blow and erase something. Pro Tools, you can just skid in and skid out, so you don't have that look. And I have that look on my face. Why are you doing that without thinking? You must think. So you have to teach that. It's responsibility. The first time I ever erased an eighth note to a solo, I learned my lesson real fast. And that's part of why the engineer is part of the date. They cannot just be a standby. And I don't respect anybody who comes in and is reading Mix magazine while we're trying to record. I just say there's no other things. And by the way, your cell phone, like mine, gets turned off, just as a courtesy to ourselves. No personal calls unless it's an emergency. You'd be amazed what happens when you immerse somebody for 8 to 10 hours and you do this every day. I say, yeah. How else are we going to make a good record? Because if you start to distract yourself, so you really have two interns. One that's actually operating the Pro Tools, and that young assistant is either a student from any of the music schools. I'd much prefer to teach a person who understands the musical language, and you should know it even more now than you had to. I mean, when you made records, you took a blade to it, and God forbid, you had little pieces of tape hanging on the wall trying to put it back together. There's that security, and it's much better to put your arm around them. Grammys in the schools, all of the stuff we try to do is raise that level, because you do have your examples. You say, look, you want to get a brass sound, here's one way of doing it. Here's the same brass sound recorded by so-and-so.
Yeah, I think we got time for 2 more questions.
Did I say too much?
No, you're
No, I don't want to miss my train.
We got time for 2 more questions. One of them is mine, however.
Yeah.
Okay.
Phil, here. One of them is mine. Of the 2 questions we have left, one of them is mine, which is whose eighth note you cut out of a solo.
Oh, really? You really want to know?
I would like to know who that was.
It was a jazzer. It was a very famous jazzer.
Oh, we're not saying.
No.
I thought there were no
But
secrets.
I fixed it.
I thought there were no secrets.
He
All right.
fixed it.
All the more reason to tell us. One more question.
David Vassy, like Shirley, not like Count. And I have a comment and a question. As a Grammy member, one of the greatest things the Grammys could do this year is put the orchestra and Kurt, just like we saw last night, Randy in the trumpet section, Phil on the alto, and put that on the show this year. An orchestra with Kurt Elling singing. That's my comment. Just like we heard last night. And my question is, why don't we just get the kids in the studio and have them play together and learn mic technique? Don't we owe it to ourselves to do that? Thank you.
Does he have the money to do
Yeah,
this?
yeah.
No,
I do it all the time.
Where are we going to bring in, how do we do that?
I can answer that.
Okay, well, you're saying it's a money situation. He's saying, what if you just using students?
Well, it's money and time. And
The money and time
effort.
in the studio.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, if he's got an answer for it, great.
It's at the school. At the school.
Well, we do that at the schools.
You know, I will
all the
say,
time.
At school, you know, everything, education always is a little behind, as was the jingle business in a way. It's kind of the same. But I think they're finally getting it. A lot of the schools I know, Humber here just built a new studio. So they're slowly realizing that the studio technique is a big part of being a musician. So hopefully the fact that that is happening will keep the legacy of these gentlemen alive, and will.
I
teach
just
the
did
young
a
kids.
big band thing at Berkeley, you know, in the studio with all the students coming down to watch how we set up and what mics.
Yeah, they are
we use and
learning,
all.
I think,
So we
now.
do it all the time, or as often as we can, and we have to make it pay the
I did
rent.
have a quick story. I did a session a few weeks ago, and overdubs, and it was fast tune, and my soloist was start at letter D, and it was a young engineer, and with Pro Tools, and he started the track at right at letter D. You know, so I had to explain to him, no, I need a couple bars.
ramp.
So I had to just to get into.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
Then I get to wondering again. I say, oh boy.
So in other words, there is hope for the future.
I think so.
Or
yeah.
maybe, we hope there is.
Yeah.
Thank you all for sticking around, and thanks so much to our panel for what I certainly hope was a very educational chat. Once again, from that side, Al Schmitt, 16-time Grammy Award-winning engineer. Kurt Elling, 7-time Grammy nominee. Phil Ramone, 10-time Grammy Award winner, Emmy winner, author of the book Making Records, which has a nicer cover. Esperanza Spalding, bassist and vocalist. More to come from her. And Randy Brecker, one of my favorite trumpet players.
That's all he has to say.
Thank you all.